Hey, it's Dave Brown here, host of Now with Dave Brown on AMI. Check out this latest highlight from the show. Let's catch up with one of our community reporters. Elizabeth Mohler joins us now from Toronto, Ontario. Hey, good morning, Elizabeth. How are you?
Good morning, Dave. I like that new snappy music. I was tapping my toes, shaking in my seat. You're keeping me on my toes this morning.
Well, thank you for that. That was a project with myself and Daniel Penamondo trying to give ourselves a little bit of some fresh summer feel on the show. Yeah, a little whoop-ah to get things going during the week. Hey, Elizabeth, so we're taking a little bit of a spin this time around. We're hearing that you had a couple of your own personal experiences here, including a little bit of a jaunt in the Hybrid Toronto Triathlon on July the 18th. So tell us about this triathlon. What were some of the distances that you pulled up here?
Yeah, so I'll just really briefly start by telling people what a triathlon is in case folks don't know. So triathlon involves some swimming in usually a lake if it's outdoors. Distances can range from 300 meters all the way up to 1.5 kilometers, depending on the length of the triathlon. And then you're going to pop out of the lake, pop out of your wetsuit, and jump on the bike for generally between 20 to 40 kilometers, again, depending on the triathlon distance. And then you're going to jump off the bike, carefully, of course, and do a run anything from sort of 7 to 10 kilometers. So this year we were kind of, no pun intended, getting our feet wet back into things. And so the swim this year was a 600 meter, followed by a run, which was about 7. And then we changed things up. This triathlon event, we did some yoga to cool our bodies down. Yeah. The thing about this year is because of course, COVID, we weren't able to engage in a full TTF event. Happens the third Saturday and Sunday in July every year. So, keep your eyes and ears peeled if you're interested. But this year, because of COVID, we had to be in smaller numbers and we had to be very careful in terms of just the spacing. So they changed it up a bit. We met at Cherry Beach and did a swim spaced out. So people started at different times who wanted to swim. And then we got out and we did a run, of course, spaced out, and then came back and did some yoga on the beach. Very fun. It was really nice to be back sort of in the swing of things, doing things a little bit differently. And I think really nice to see the Toronto Triathlon Festival folks. They really are like family. I think that we've got some pictures. If they're not up now, they will be. One is of me in a wetsuit and one's with an inflatable sort of raft thing that I'm standing beside.
Well, we definitely had the wetsuit one up before, and we just posted that one back up on the screen, and I'm sure we'll see the raft in just a moment. Elizabeth, you kind of touched on it a little bit there, but I want you to go a bit deeper. How did it feel to be back doing a competition here, knowing that you deeply care about fitness? It's an important part of your lifestyle. How did it feel to actually get a chance to do a little bit of competition?
It actually felt a bit scary. We've been doing things at home for so long, doing our own workouts. To be back out in the open water, when I first stepped in the lake, it was sort of a really quiet early morning. And I thought, oh my gosh, it's a bit surreal here. And am I going to be okay? Do I remember how to swim? Do I know kind of what I need to do to be in sync with my guide? Because of COVID, we haven't been practicing a whole lot. Mm-hmm. So there was this sort of surreal feel. But then at the end, there was this beautiful sense of community, of people coming together after 2 years of being apart or seeing each other on Zoom for workouts, and this real sense of, kinship and belonging, and a space where, we've made it through and we're going to continue to make it through, but things are going to look a little bit different. So a real mixed bag of emotions.
Since Ontario allowed gyms to reopen a couple of weeks ago, I've gone down to my building a couple of times where we have a small fitness room, and I've been keeping the mask on and working out. And you're right, it felt super surreal the first time I did it. It's been normalized a teensy tiny bit. But have you had a chance to actually go inside the walls of a gym yet?
Yes, actually, we've got a gym in our building and a pool, and I'm very fortunate to have been inside both. But, even swimming in a pool is so different than that open lake swim on an early Sunday morning. You can hear the gardener rumbling in the background, and it's just sort of like, it's just this moment of awe or awesome, Yeah.
How can folks learn more about the triathlon?
Check TTF out on Facebook. There's a website that I'm sure the good folks here at AMI will pop up on the blog. And, honestly, on Twitter, and you can always follow me. I do post through the year about stuff going on with triathlon, so you can check that out too.
Toronto Triathlon Festival.com is the website. And yes, you are absolutely right, Elizabeth. We'll put that up on the blog after the show, ami.ca/nowblog, ami.ca/nowblog. Now, Elizabeth, on a much more serious note, we understand you recently had an experience going to the hospital during the pandemic. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, so not as much fun as a triathlon, but needs to be done. So I went to one of our local hospitals here in Toronto for my annual eye appointment. And I got to tell you, I was pretty nervous. I've been reading a lot about COVID and healthcare precautions and people with disabilities struggling to bring a support person in with them. And I thought, this is going to be really challenging. So I didn't bring a support person, but when I got there, I thought, like, how am I going to navigate all these lines? And so I think a couple of really good things happened that I want to point out. The first thing was I guess they'd call it like a bouncer at the door. I don't really know what else to call this person, kind of directing traffic. So, at the start, somebody to say, where are you going? What do what's your purpose here today, and how can I help? And that felt really good right at the bus stop at the door of the hospital.
They should make that permanent. That's a great idea.
You know what, Dave? I said the exact same thing to my eye doctor. I said, please, we need somebody standing there directing traffic. That was so helpful. So the bouncer, for lack of a better word, then called a volunteer to walk me through the screening process, because there's 4 or 5 different lines you have to go into. There's the first one with all the questions, the temperature. They give you your own mask, so you're not allowed to wear your mask. They require. And then there's a line where they ask you to actually put on a sticker that says you've been screened and approved, and I guess a seal of approval, as it were. But then the thing that really impressed me was, again, these volunteers walked me to exactly where I was going, and that never happened pre-COVID. So the support I got, which is kind of counterintuitive, Dave, to everything we've been hearing during COVID, was phenomenal. Everything from that bouncer at the bus stop to the volunteers. And then at the end of my appointment, the receptionist actually called a volunteer to walk me confession time, first to second cup, and then back out through to the bus stop.
Well, listen, after any possible medical exam, you deserve a treat, so it might as well be a nice coffee from a second cup. Elizabeth, so I have avoided all of my appointments since moving to Toronto because a global pandemic kicked in right after I moved here. So the eye appointment, the dentist, the massage, any of that's been off the table for me. Do you have any advice for me or other individuals who might be traveling to a hospital or a medical facility during this time?
I do, because I've also been recently to my dentist. Funny you mentioned that. So I think the power of a call. So I called my eye doctor and said, I'm going to be coming. I'm not bringing a support person. I'm trying to be respectful of the rules. What supports are in place? And they actually were able to explain to me exactly what was going to happen. So even before I got off that bus, I knew that those bouncers would be waiting. At the dentist, same thing. I call ahead and I explain I'm coming. I ask, is there a quiet time of the day when I can come and perhaps get a little bit more assistance? So I think working with our healthcare teams, letting them know what we need, giving them advance notice about appointments if possible, and really just being able to articulate what it is you're going to need to feel safe when you get there.
Absolutely. That's very well put, Elizabeth. Thank you for offering that advice to us. Elizabeth, one more piece from the world of Elizabeth Mohler, and it's actually some pretty exciting news. It's back to school time for you and some in-person studies. So you're going to be making a big move out to London, Ontario, where at Western, you're going to be entering your second degree of a PhD program in health and rehabilitation sciences. So what are we looking at exactly for Elizabeth's return to school in September?
Yeah, so my experience is a little bit interesting in that I'm actually staying here in Toronto and taking the VIA down once a week. So I'm kind of going to be navigating trains. I guess I can't say planes, but certainly some transit buses and subways. So trains, planes, and automobiles don't quite apply. But I think return to school for me has meant a couple of things. It's meant, again, doing that prep work ahead of time. So setting up orientation and mobility, even if you're a really good traveler, because campus layout might have changed. Maybe there's going to be buildings that are structured differently with entrances and exits for COVID. Maybe there's going to be different setups in your classrooms. So I advise anybody, no matter kind of what their skill level is, to get some refreshers, because things are likely going to look different if you're in person. I think that's one thing that I've started to do. And also I've started to ask questions again of my department, like, what's going to be the expectation? Are we hybrid? Are we fully in person? If we're in person, are we masked? If we're in person, what safety precautions are going to be in place? So being able to really ask those questions. And I think especially for me, taking the VIA, again, doing that prep work ahead of time to make sure I understand what precautions are needed on the train. What does London Transit require when I get there? And I have to say also, I think part of my role as a student leader advocate is to make sure that people who don't want to return to in person are still included. So making sure we have activities and meetings that are also hybrid or virtual, making sure that people who don't feel safe on campus yet have a voice and have a say, because the reality is not everybody's going to want to jump back in with both feet. And I think we need to really be reflective about that.
Do you think that accessibility has been taken into account in regards to these reopening plans?
I think I'd like to see more of it. I recognize the labor that goes into hybrid teaching and hybrid learning, but I think that just a full slate, we're mostly in person, isn't going to work for a lot of people. And it may not work for a lot of families if parents have kiddos that for whatever reason need to be at home. So I think I'd like to see a really broad, inclusive strategy around hybrid learning, and a really clear messaging about what safety precautions are going to be in place come September 1.
Hey, well, Elizabeth, by the next time we talk to you, that will be well underway. So looking forward to the next time we get a chance to speak and to hear about some of these experiences in the classroom, or at least in the kind of classroom sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. I'm looking forward to that as well, Dave.
That's great. That's Elizabeth Mohler, community reporter in Toronto, Ontario. If you do want to find out more information about some of the stories we cover on the show, you can always find the blog ami.ca/nowblog, ami.ca/nowblog. Do you want to dive into more conversations like this? Watch Now with Dave Brown weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on AMI TV, or download the podcasts wherever you listen.